Today is a big news day in the world of Magic the Gathering. We have Wizards of the Coast discontinuing core sets, but at the same time bringing back store championships. And on top of that, they have a mind-blowing Commander event that I would love to be a part of.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well. We have gathered today for another installment of Mega Magic News. Magic giveth and magic taketh away. All right, so basically what we're going to start with is we're going to talk about the core set situation. We'll talk about what we're losing before we talk about what we're gaining. So, you may have noticed in Wizards of the Coast announcement of the sets that we're going to be getting in 2022 that there was no mention of a core set. And that's because it has been confirmed also by Mark Rosewater there is not going to be a core set in 2022. So, Wizards of the Coast has played around with core sets throughout the history of Magic the Gathering. Originally, core sets were fully reprint sets, right? And the idea was to just get more copies of pre-existing cards into players' hands, and they were sets that weren't beholden to being in a particular locale, right? So no core set was ever set on one particular plane, Ravnica, Innistrad, anything like that. Core sets were meant to be a beginner introductory style product. And the Dungeons and Dragons set that we just got was this year's version of the core set. Now, core sets are sort of a mixed bag. They're a great opportunity for Wizards of the Coast to reprint cards we don't already have, but not really a great opportunity to do much in the way of world building. Yes, they can create new cards, right? It can be half reprints, half new cards for a core set. That's sometimes been the mix. But the problem is that core sets pretty much end up universally panned. And by that I mean they almost always do worse than regular Magic the Gathering sets. And that's partially because they're more simplistic, and partially because they have a ton of reprints, but usually didn't have too much in the way of really exciting, crazy reprints like the sets that Wizards of the Coast makes now. And on top of that, Wizards of the Coast clearly has a number of different vectors that they're using for reprinting that they didn't before, like Secret Layers, for example. That's just one, right? Then you've got like the Modern Horizons and other sets where cards from older expansions make their way into Modern. So we've got this scenario where the core set doesn't really serve the same purpose that it used to from multiple perspectives. I mean, it's still somewhat good as a beginner product, but other than that, it's pretty much, you know what I mean? The idea of them not doing core sets anymore isn't really a big deal. We've been through this in a sort of stutter step in the past, where Wizards of the Coast had done away with core sets for a few years, brought them back, and it looks like after Core 2021, they went, you know what? We need to spice this up. Let's do Dungeons and Dragons for the next year. And even with that, they've turned around and said, okay, we're not doing one for 2022. And there's already rumblings that in 2023, Jumpstart will replace the core set. So that, in a way, makes sense to me because Jumpstart allows for a beginner-friendly style concept where it's like, hey, just grab two of these packs, put them together, and we can play a game of Magic. Actually, they're very, very similar to the old school intro decks that Magic the Gathering used to make, where it was just two tiny little card, like you'd have a tiny little green deck and a tiny little blue deck, boom, slap them together, that's your entire deck. So you get your 60 card or 40 card deck depending on the era of the intro deck, because they've experimented with different things. But Jumpstart has the beauty of being very beginner friendly. It doesn't require you to figure out how to do anything like draft or sealed. It's literally grab two packs, slap them together, and have fun. And on top of that, Jumpstart also has the proposition for Wizards of the Coast that they can include new cards as well as reprints. So they have the ability to put in things that are spicy for pre-existing players, because the pre-existing player base is not really buying a ton of core sets most of the time, and Wizards of the Coast clearly wants to get as much of our sweet, sweet dollars as they can, right? So it looks like going forwards, core set is going to be discontinued and is going to be morphing into a yearly jumpstart release, which I'm gonna be real, I can get 100% on board with that. I am totally fine with that. I will not miss the core sets in any real fashion. Ultimately, they don't really serve the game in the way they were meant to, because the truth is, there's not a lot of people who really actually start Magic with core sets. Usually people are introduced to Magic by playing with their friends who already have cards, who will just go, here's a deck to play or something like that. So you've got a situation where Wizards of the Coast used to think that core sets were the door, the entryway door that you would walk through. It used to be Wizards of the Coast thought standard was the way you would get into Magic, and core sets would be your basic beginner on-ramp. But ultimately, that's not nearly as useful as going with Jumpstart or other things, or they wouldn't be discontinuing the core set series. Now, bear in mind, anything that Wizards of the Coast does, even if it looks like it's going to go on forever, can change. So 3, 4, 5 years from now, you could see me come out with a video going, core sets are back! And we'll be like, oh, core sets, yeah, let's make stuff for beginners. Who knows, right? I don't 100% know exactly what the future's going to be. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be cowering under my blankets going, oh no, I know it's going to happen! The curse of future vision! I would never want to be able to see my future. Like, imagine seeing how your life ends. How are you supposed to live your life effectively then, right? You're going to live in fear of what could happen, or you're going to be reckless and crazy because of the knowledge. But either way, just wanted to touch on the fact that core sets, adios, my friends, goodbye. So, that's what Wizards is taking away. But in its place, we're just going to be getting premier sets that are actually set on like genuine Magic planes, where we're just going to get more story and more development overall, hopefully. So for me, I'm a huge fan of that, right? I don't need any beginner Magic products. I've been around for a while, all right? So we've got the core set situation out of the way. Let's talk about the return of the store championships with a funky little twist for Premier stores. Wizards of the Coast is really ramping up what Premier WPN locations get. WPN is Wizards Play Network, if you're not familiar with it, and that is the organization that handles events for all of the thousands of LGSs that exist across the globe. Now, the majority of these LGSs are not Premier locations. In fact, it's only about the top 5% of locations that are Premier locations. But the good news is, store championships are going to be available for all stores. So this is not a Premier only event. The Commander thing we're going to talk about, unfortunately, is. But in this case, these are going to be available to all LGSs. This will be something, if it's done the way it was done before, it'll be something that happens with every set release. So you'll have one for each season going forwards. And I believe it's starting with Innistrad. I'm not 100% sure when the start date is, but I believe they're starting with Innistrad. So what would happen is you'll have an Innistrad Werewolf Variation Championship, and then when the Innistrad Vampire set comes out, there'll also be one of those. Now, in the past, they have featured both promos, they've featured playmats, and they featured deck boxes. So the way it worked in the past is whoever came in first would get the store championship playmat. And I remember this being a big deal. The store championship is a bit of a weird beast, where they originally had like game days, and then they switched it into store championships, and they changed the order around. But ultimately, in my opinion, the best thing to do with store championships is save them for like the end of the standard season. So you let everybody play with Innistrad in however many months. Once you start to get closer to the end of the season, that's when you have the store championships, because everybody is familiar with the standard environment at that point. They've had a chance to get their legs under them, and then you compete for a playmat in first place. They would have top 8 deck boxes, and then they would also have particular promo cards. So there would be like top 8 promo cards, and then a participatory promo as well. So in this case, they're going to be having 3 different variations of promos, which is pretty sweet. And what's even sweeter, at least for the Premier stores, is that if you are a WPN Premier location, then the top 8 promos for the event will actually have the store's name printed on the card. And I think that's a really cool concept. These cards are going to be extremely rare to get the versions that have store names on them, right? Because it's only going to be the top 8 for these promos, and it's only going to be for Premier WPN locations, which is pretty wild. I really liked the idea of a store getting to have its name displayed on the card. It kind of adds an extra level to their involvement. So I think it's really cool of Wizards of the Coast to do it. Ultimately, I wish they would expand that so that it covered all LGSs, so everybody had an opportunity to enjoy that. But I get it, right? I mean, there's certain monetary restrictions. It costs more money, takes more time, all that kind of stuff. You got to get all the different stores' names. It's probably not worth it for them financially, which is too bad because it's a really cool idea. But it's also another incentive to try and hit the levels to get to the Premier status, although a lot of stores will never be able to do that just based on the numbers. So I mentioned that there was going to be a special Commander event for the Premier stores only, and I would absolutely love to play in one of these because it's a really cool concept. It's a Commander party, all right? And they're doing it for Innistrad. And the concept behind it is everybody who participates in the event, all you have to do is bring a Commander deck or pick up a Commander deck in store, however you want to do it, right? You just need to have a Commander deck to play in the event. And then when you play in the event, you will be assigned a faction. You'll be given a little card that represents your faction. And they have this setup kind of like the old school days. Like, I don't know how long you guys have been around, depending on, how long you've been playing Magic. But they used to do amazing, crazy events. Like, this is the Hell Vault that was sent out for the Avacyn Restored event. And there was like a set number of things that had to happen before Avacyn could be freed. And the bottom of the Hell Vault was actually full of magical goodies, which was a really, really neat sort of event to be a part of. So they're doing a similar kind of thing here in that you're given these faction cards and then they will literally play video clips. They're literally going to have video taking you through a story, an adventure on Innistrad that will be influenced by whatever faction is winning. So from reading the instructions that go along with the event, the way that it seems to me how it works is at a certain point in the tournament, whoever's organizing it will come out and say, who has the most creatures out? Or who has the most lands? Who has the highest life total? Who has the most bread, yo? Who has the highest life total? Whatever particular conditions they are, right? And then whichever of the two people who's in the game has that result, they basically get to put their faction card up in the air. And then you count up the different faction cards. And whatever faction has more points from those cards being held up, that determines how the story is going to go forward. So it's kind of like, you ever see those old board games like, what was it, Nightmare or something like that? I put you in the black hole. You know what I'm talking about? Those old board games where they came with a VHS cassette. Man, I'm old. They came with a VHS cassette and they added this extra level of interactivity with random events and stuff. So it's something akin to that where you get to play through this event. And I admit, I am super jealous of the people who get to do it. I remember the last faction-based event that I can recall was the Dragon's Maze event. And if you've been watching the channel for a long time, you will remember I used to have the Dragon Maze posted up and we used it to track subscribers. Who knows? Maybe I'll bring it back at some point. But either way, the Dragon's Maze had people assigned to the 10 different guilds of Ravnica, and depending on how the tournament was faring, you would have your little guild progressing through the Dragon's Maze, and whatever guild managed to make it all the way through the Dragon Maze first was the winning guild. And I didn't think people were going to be that into it when I put the poster up on the wall because I was running the event, but every time I went to update the standings, there was a crowd of people going, oh, cheering or booing or whatever. Like, this stuff creates a real sense of excitement, a real sense of community. And again, this is an event that I wish Wizards of the Coast would roll out for everybody because it's such a cool concept. I understand wanting to reward your premier stores for being your highest level of business interaction, but come on, man! I don't live in a huge city. I live in a reasonably sized city. There are literally no premier stores in my city, and I want to be a part of one of these amazing events, dude. And it's another thing to know that we're probably never really going to see what happens with that event. Nobody who goes to the event is probably going to sit there and record camera footage of all the little incidental things that go on. So we're just going to have to get like a secondhand story of it. I wish I could go. Either way, that wraps up the news that I had to cover today. If you like what I have to say or you enjoy my channel, click the like button because YouTube loves that. If you love what I'm doing, become a patron on my Patreon. A big thank you to all my patrons, and I shall see you, my friends, either tonight in the live stream or in the next video.